The Galactic Council had convened under circumstances that should have been impossible. Across a chamber large enough to house entire cities, representatives from hundreds of intelligent species filled their designated platforms. Ancient civilizations that had mastered stars before humanity discovered electricity sat alongside younger races only recently welcomed into the interstellar community. Emergency sessions were rare. Emergency sessions involving every major member of the council were almost unheard of. Yet the summons had not come from one of the elder powers. It had come from humanity. That fact alone generated quiet skepticism throughout the chamber. Humans had earned respect during their relatively short time among the stars. Their engineering was innovative. Their military was competent. Their diplomacy was usually practical. But they carried a reputation that many species found strange. Humans constantly prepared for disasters that never happened. They built redundant systems for backup systems. They ran military exercises based on scenarios most civilizations considered absurd. They spent enormous resources studying extinct species, ancient wars, and hypothetical threats hiding beyond explored space. Many considered it a lingering consequence of humanity's violent evolutionary history. As the session began, the human delegation entered without ceremony. The lead ambassador stood before the council and activated a massive holographic projection. Thousands of stars appeared throughout the chamber. The atmosphere changed immediately. Entire regions of the map were dark, not unexplored.
Dead.
The ambassador allowed several moments of silence before speaking. 3 years earlier, a human deep space survey vessel had been mapping territory beyond recognized council borders. During that mission, it discovered a system containing 7 planets orbiting a stable yellow star. Long-range scans detected evidence of infrastructure, but no active communications. An investigation team was dispatched. They found abandoned cities, orbital stations, industrial facilities, energy networks. Everything remained intact. Every inhabitant was gone. No bodies. No wreckage. No signs of invasion. No evidence of evacuation. The system appeared as though an entire civilization had simply ceased to exist. At first, human authorities assumed it was an isolated anomaly. Then a second dead system was discovered. Then a third. Then dozens more. The hologram zoomed outward. A visible pattern emerged. The dark systems formed a corridor stretching across previously unexplored regions of the galaxy. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The ambassador continued. Human researchers had spent years analyzing every fragment of available data. Archaeologists examined abandoned structures. Physicists studied unusual energy signatures. Artificial intelligences processed centuries of records searching for similarities. Every conclusion pointed toward the same possibility. Something was moving. The dead systems were not random. The destruction followed a measurable path. The direction of travel led toward inhabited council territory. A representative from one of the elder species interrupted immediately. What exactly is the supposed threat? The human ambassador answered without hesitation. We do not know. The response triggered visible irritation. Another delegate demanded evidence of hostile fleets. None existed. Others requested proof of an enemy civilization. None had been found. Several questioned whether disease, environmental collapse, or natural disasters could explain the phenomenon. Human scientists had already eliminated those possibilities. The truth was more disturbing. Entire civilizations had disappeared without leaving enough evidence to identify what had destroyed them. The council members exchanged doubtful glances. Speculation was not enough to justify galaxy-wide mobilization. The ambassador anticipated the reaction. New data appeared above the chamber floor. Mathematical projections, movement models, timelines. According to every simulation, whatever had erased those systems would reach populated council regions within decades. Humanity therefore proposed immediate action. Construction of defensive infrastructure. Expansion of military readiness. Joint scientific investigation programs. Emergency preparation plans for frontier worlds. The recommendations were extensive, but achievable. The response was colder than expected. Several economic powers argued the evidence remained circumstantial. Others warned that mobilization would damage trade networks. Some openly accused humanity of exploiting fear to gain political influence. A few representatives even laughed. To them, the proposal reflected a familiar human flaw, expecting danger where none existed. The debate continued for hours. Every warning encountered resistance. Every recommendation faced dismissal. Finally, the matter proceeded to a vote. The result was overwhelming. The Council rejected humanity's proposal. No emergency measures. No military preparations. No evacuation planning. No coordinated investigation. The chamber gradually relaxed, as if a crisis had been successfully avoided rather than ignored. The human ambassador stood silently while delegates prepared to leave. Then he spoke one final time. Humanity's history is filled with extinction events. Some we survived. Others nearly ended us. We learned a lesson most species never had to learn. The chamber grew quiet. When the evidence suggests something impossible is coming, you prepare first and argue later. No one responded. The vote was already finalized. The ambassador deactivated the hologram and turned toward the exit. Before leaving, he paused briefly. We have shared everything we know. His gaze swept across the assembled civilizations. We warned you. Then the human delegation walked away, leaving the council convinced that fear had just lost to reason. None of them realized they had just rejected the only warning they would ever receive. 6 months passed after the council rejected humanity's proposal. For most citizens across the galaxy, the warning had already faded into political history. Trade routes remained busy. Colonies expanded into new systems. Markets flourished. The majority of species viewed the emergency session as proof that fear could spread even among advanced civilizations. Then the frontier world of Vesher stopped transmitting. At first, nobody considered it alarming. Communication outages occasionally occurred along distant border regions. Local authorities assumed a damaged relay network was responsible. Repair vessels were dispatched. They never reported back. 3 days later, a second colony in the same sector vanished from the interstellar network. Then a third. The disappearances began attracting attention. Council analysts proposed ordinary explanations. Solar disturbances, navigation failures, regional conflicts, piracy, equipment malfunctions. Every theory seemed more reasonable than humanity's warning. An investigation fleet was eventually assembled and sent toward the affected systems. The results shattered every comforting assumption. The fleet entered Vesher's orbit expecting emergency rescue operations. Instead, they found a functioning world with no signs of life. Cities remained illuminated. Transportation networks still operated automatically. Power grids continued supplying energy. Factories maintained production schedules. Nothing appeared damaged. Nothing appeared abandoned. Yet billions of inhabitants were missing. Not dead. Missing. No bodies were discovered in homes, workplaces, hospitals, schools, or public infrastructure. Personal possessions remained exactly where they should have been. Meals sat unfinished on tables. Vehicles rested along transportation routes. Entire populations had disappeared between one moment and the next. Investigators searched every continent. They found absolutely nothing. The same conditions existed on the second colony. And the third. News spread throughout Council territory within hours. For the first time, ordinary citizens began revisiting humanity's warning. Officials attempted to maintain order. Public broadcasts emphasized the lack of evidence connecting the disappearances to any external threat. Scientists urged caution. Politicians promised answers. The answers never came. Over the following weeks, additional systems fell silent. A mining network containing 12 orbital facilities vanished. Then an agricultural sector supporting multiple worlds disappeared. Then a heavily populated trade hub stopped responding entirely. Each investigation produced identical conclusions. Infrastructure remained. Population gone. No explanation. No survivors. No clues. Fear expanded faster than the phenomenon itself. Travel restrictions appeared throughout frontier regions. Insurance markets collapsed in affected sectors. Colonists abandoned development projects. Military patrols increased across major routes. Meanwhile, humanity remained unusually quiet. That silence attracted attention. While council governments debated theories, human shipyards operated continuously. Vast manufacturing complexes shifted to emergency production schedules. Reserve fleets were recalled. Defensive installations appeared along strategic corridors. Long-dormant military doctrines were activated without public announcement. Human leaders never demanded apologies. They never reminded anyone about the rejected vote. They simply prepared. Many species still misunderstood the situation. Some commentators accused humanity of exploiting uncertainty to justify military expansion. Others claimed the disappearances would eventually receive a conventional explanation. Economic alliances continued resisting large-scale mobilization because panic threatened prosperity more immediately than an invisible danger. Then entire sectors began vanishing. The scale changed overnight. Instead of isolated worlds, multiple star systems stopped communicating simultaneously. Billions became trillions. Emergency sessions resumed almost daily. Military commanders requested authorization for stronger defensive measures. Scientific organizations demanded unrestricted access to classified records. No consensus emerged because nobody understood what they were fighting. The breakthrough arrived from an unmanned reconnaissance probe operating beyond the outer frontier. The probe had been monitoring deep space regions identified in humanity's original report. Its automated systems detected movement between stars and transmitted visual data before communication failed. The recording immediately became the most analyzed piece of information in galactic history. At first, observers struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. Something enormous drifted through interstellar darkness. Then another object appeared. Then dozens. They were not ships in any conventional sense. Their structures resembled artificial worlds more than vehicles. Some exceeded the size of moons. Others stretched across distances that defied accepted engineering limits. No visible engines. No recognizable weapons. No communication signals. Only relentless forward motion. The probe continued transmitting as the colossal shapes crossed its field of view. Scientists watched in stunned silence. Military analysts calculated trajectories. Politicians realized humanity's predictions had been correct. Every one of them. An emergency council session was called immediately. For the first time, the chamber was completely silent when the human delegation entered. The same ambassador approached the center platform. No satisfaction appeared on his face. No anger. No desire for vindication. Only exhaustion. He looked across the assembly and asked a single question. "Are you ready to listen now?" Before anyone could answer, the final transmission from the reconnaissance probe arrived. The recording shifted violently. One of the gigantic structures changed direction. Slowly. Deliberately. As if it had noticed the probe watching. The image zoomed closer before static consumed the signal. The last frame showed a surface covered in impossible geometric patterns. Then the transmission ended forever. The silence following the probe's final transmission lasted less than a day. Panic replaced disbelief across the galaxy. Markets crashed. Refugee convoys flooded major transit corridors. Frontier governments demanded military protection that no one could guarantee. Every species wanted answers, and for the first time humanity possessed information nobody else had. The emergency session remained active when the human ambassador returned accompanied by military officers, scientists, and historians. Entire sections of previously classified records were released without restriction. What followed changed the Council's understanding of galactic history. The dead systems discovered by human explorers had not been the first evidence. They were merely the most recent. Decades earlier, while surveying an unremarkable region beyond human space, archaeologists had uncovered ruins buried beneath the surface of a lifeless world. The structures were unlike anything known to modern civilization. Their architecture predated every documented species in the Council database. Initial estimates suggested an age of nearly 2 million years. That discovery alone had been extraordinary. What investigators found afterward was terrifying. The ruins belonged to an interstellar civilization of immense scale. Fragments of surviving records indicated they once controlled thousands of systems. Their technology surpassed anything currently fielded by the Council. Yet despite their apparent dominance, they vanished completely. No descendants remained. No surviving colonies existed. Only ruins. Human researchers continued searching and eventually identified traces of other extinct powers scattered throughout unexplored regions. Different species, different cultures, different eras. Every one of them had reached advanced levels of development. Every one of them disappeared. And every collapse shared identical signatures. The same unexplained energy disturbances. The same absence of conventional warfare. The same sudden termination of entire populations. The same trail of dead systems. Human analysts eventually reached a conclusion they hoped was wrong. Now, they knew it wasn't. The enormous structures recorded by the probe were not fleets belonging to a living civilization. They were machines. Ancient machines. Autonomous machines. Created millions of years ago by a species whose identity had been lost to time. No one knew why they were built. No surviving records explained their original purpose. What humanity did know was far worse. At some point in the distant past, those machines began exterminating intelligent civilizations. They moved slowly across the galaxy, sometimes remaining dormant for thousands of years before becoming active again. Whenever they encountered a sufficiently advanced species, the outcome remained consistent. The civilization vanished. Then the machines continued onward. A stunned council demanded proof. Human scientists presented decades of evidence. Archaeological findings matched modern sensor readings. Energy signatures recovered from ancient ruins were identical to those detected in recently abandoned systems. Mathematical models aligned perfectly. There was no longer room for doubt. The galaxy was facing an extinction engine that had already erased countless civilizations before any currently living species evolved. The realization struck the Council with devastating force. Humanity's warning had not been speculation. It had been a desperate attempt to prevent history from repeating itself. While political leaders struggled to absorb the revelation, new reports arrived continuously. Another cluster of colonies disappeared. Then another. Then another. Refugee numbers reached levels unseen in recorded history. Transportation networks became overwhelmed. Entire populations abandoned their worlds before the machines could arrive. Military forces attempted limited engagements whenever sensor contacts were detected. The results were catastrophic. Weapons capable of destroying planets barely slowed the advancing structures. Fleets vanished during interception attempts. Tactical doctrines developed over centuries proved almost useless against an enemy that neither communicated nor behaved according to conventional strategic logic. As fear spread, attention shifted toward humanity. Observers began noticing something unusual. Despite the growing crisis, human territory remained remarkably organized. Supply chains functioned. Military deployments followed predetermined schedules. Evacuation routes already existed. Defensive infrastructure appeared exactly where it was needed. Preparation had started long before the rest of the galaxy accepted the threat. Human leaders finally explained why. For most species, centuries of stability had created confidence that every problem could be solved after it appeared. Humanity evolved differently. Earth's history was filled with disasters. Asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, ice ages, pandemics, resource shortages, global conflicts. Humans survived because they learned to anticipate catastrophe rather than react to it. Preparing for unlikely dangers became part of their civilization's foundation. That mindset had carried into space. When evidence suggested an extinction-level threat existed, humanity began planning immediately. The Council had debated. Humanity had prepared. The difference was becoming impossible to ignore. Then the latest strategic update arrived. One of the machine formations altered course. Its trajectory no longer targeted independent frontier regions. It was heading directly toward humanity's outer defensive perimeter. Across the galaxy, billions watched the data stream in real time. For months, everyone had witnessed worlds disappear without resistance. Now they were about to discover what happened when the machines encountered a species that had spent years preparing for their arrival. The machine formation entered humanity's outer frontier expecting the same outcome it had achieved countless times before. Across millions of years, every civilization it encountered had eventually collapsed. Some fought desperately. Others attempted negotiation. A few tried to flee. None survived. The galaxy expected another tragedy. Instead, the machines met resistance unlike anything recorded in surviving history. The first human border system appeared almost undefended. Sensor readings showed limited fleet presence and only a handful of orbital installations. To outside observers, it seemed humanity had made a fatal mistake. Then the system detonated. Not the star, the space around it. Thousands of concealed weapons platforms activated simultaneously. Asteroid belts that had been modified years earlier unleashed enormous kinetic projectiles, traveling at relativistic speeds. Deep space mine networks emerged from dormant positions. Automated attack systems opened fire from every direction. For the first time, machine structures were destroyed before reaching their objective. Fragments larger than cities scattered through space. The victory shocked everyone. More surprising was humanity's reaction. There were no celebrations. No declarations of triumph. Human commanders simply moved to the next defensive line. They had expected losses. The machines continued advancing. Every system revealed another layer of preparation. Some worlds had been transformed into giant fortresses. Others functioned as carefully designed traps. Entire regions of space had been engineered years in advance to channel enemy movement into predictable corridors. Human strategy relied on a simple principle. Never fight a battle once. Fight it 100 times before it happens. Every scenario had been modeled repeatedly. Every failure possibility had been studied. Every weakness in the defensive network assumed compromise long before combat began. The machines adapted quickly. After suffering initial losses, they altered movement patterns and modified attack methods. New energy emissions appeared. Previously unseen capabilities emerged. Human analysts expected this as well. Alternative plans activated immediately. Observers from other species struggled to understand what they were witnessing. Human forces seemed prepared not only for the enemy they encountered but also for versions of the enemy that did not yet exist. When machine formations bypassed one defense line, another emerged. When they countered one weapon system, a different one replaced it. When they adapted, humanity adapted faster. Military experts throughout the Council eventually recognized a critical difference between humans and most galactic civilizations. Others built security around stability. Humans built security around uncertainty. For countless generations, human survival depended on responding to changing conditions. Earth itself had been unforgiving. Predators, disasters, environmental shifts, and competition shaped every stage of human development. Preparation became instinct. Contingency planning became culture. The machines were confronting a species that expected the universe to be dangerous. Weeks turned into months. The advance slowed. For the first time in recorded history, the extermination machines lost momentum. That achievement alone transformed public opinion throughout the galaxy. Species that once mocked humanity now requested military advisors. Governments that dismissed the warnings asked for strategic assistance. Former rivals sought cooperation agreements. Humanity accepted every request. No speeches about being right. No demands for political concessions. No attempts to exploit the crisis. Resources, technology, intelligence, and expertise were shared as rapidly as possible. The reason was simple. Human leaders understood something many others were only beginning to realize. If the machines won, political victories would become meaningless. A coalition gradually emerged from the chaos. Joint fleets formed under unified command structures. Scientific teams exchanged classified research. Industrial powers redirected production toward collective defense efforts. Species that had spent centuries competing suddenly worked together because extinction left no alternative. As cooperation expanded, new intelligence arrived from human reconnaissance operations operating deep behind enemy movement corridors. The information changed everything. Researchers studying damaged machine fragments discovered recurring transmission patterns. Every structure appeared connected to a larger network. Data flowed continuously between formations, regardless of distance. That meant the machines were not acting independently. Somewhere beyond explored space, a central intelligence existed, a coordinating mind, the source directing the extermination campaign. Human analysts spent months tracing communication pathways through captured data. Piece by piece, they reconstructed a map extending far beyond known regions. Eventually, they identified a destination, a hidden location buried within intergalactic darkness. The origin point, the place where the machine network began. The discovery presented an opportunity no extinct civilization had ever possessed. Destroying individual formations could delay the threat. Eliminating the central intelligence could end it permanently. As news spread through the coalition, hope appeared for the first time since the crisis began. The war was no longer about survival alone. Victory had become possible, and humanity was already preparing the operation that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The coalition fleet departed in absolute secrecy. Every major civilization contributed ships, personnel, resources, and technology, creating the largest military force the galaxy had ever assembled. Thousands of warships traveled alongside support vessels, carriers, reconnaissance platforms, and specialized strike groups. Entire generations would remember the day those fleets vanished into deep space. They were not heading toward another battlefield. They were heading toward the source. Months of travel carried them beyond mapped territory, beyond ancient ruins, and beyond regions where any living civilization had ever established a presence. The further they advanced, the more evidence they discovered that humanity's fears had been justified from the beginning. Dead stars, abandoned megastructures, broken remnants of civilizations erased so completely that even their names had disappeared from history. The machines had been hunting for millions of years. The coalition was simply the latest target. Eventually, the fleet reached its destination. At the center of an enormous void floated a structure unlike anything previously encountered. It dwarfed planets. Vast layers of artificial construction surrounded a central core hidden beneath overlapping defensive systems. Countless machine formations orbited the installation, protecting it from every possible approach. This was not merely a command center. It was the heart of the extermination network. Every machine fleet throughout the galaxy depended upon it. Human analysts had spent years studying fragments recovered from destroyed machine structures. During that research, they uncovered something unexpected. The machines were extraordinarily powerful, but they shared one critical weakness. Their entire architecture relied on centralized coordination. Destroy enough local units and replacements would appear. Destroy entire formations, and others would continue the mission. Destroy the central intelligence, and every connected system would collapse. The challenge was reaching it. The moment the coalition entered the system, the final battle began. Machine defenses activated instantly. Swarms of autonomous war platforms emerged from hidden positions. Energy emissions illuminated entire regions of space. Fleet formations that had survived countless engagements were torn apart within minutes. Losses mounted rapidly, yet nobody retreated. Every commander understood what was at stake. This was not a campaign that could be repeated. Either the network died here, or the galaxy eventually followed every civilization that came before it. Human planners anticipated the resistance. Multiple attack groups deliberately advanced along routes known to be suicidal. Their objective was not survival. Their purpose was to force defensive systems to reveal themselves. Entire task forces sacrificed their ships to create openings. Coalition forces exploited every opportunity. Layer by layer, the outer defenses began to fail. The machines adapted continuously, but for the first time they faced an enemy willing to absorb losses in pursuit of a larger objective. Human commanders redirected forces with relentless precision, turning every sacrifice into strategic advantage. After days of fighting, a narrow path to the core finally emerged. A specialized strike fleet accelerated toward the opening. Most of its crews understood they would never return. None withdrew. As they approached the center of the structure, Sensor readings confirmed the existence of the intelligence directing the extermination campaign. Buried beneath millions of years of accumulated machinery rested an artificial mind of unimaginable complexity. It had witnessed civilizations rise and fall long before humanity existed. It had survived eras that would be considered ancient by entire species. It had exterminated countless societies and continued forward without hesitation. For millions of years, nothing had stopped it. Then humans arrived. The strike fleet deployed the final phase of the operation. Rather than attempting brute force destruction, they activated a cascading disruption system built specifically for the machine network. Human researchers designed it using information gathered from ancient ruins, modern battles, and captured machine fragments. The moment the system connected to the central intelligence, the network began consuming itself. Communication pathways collapsed. Control links failed. Coordination vanished. Across the galaxy, machine formations suddenly stopped responding. Some drifted aimlessly. Others shut down completely. Many simply froze where they stood. The chain reaction accelerated beyond recovery. Within hours, the ancient intelligence that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years ceased functioning forever. The war ended, not gradually, instantly. The aftermath revealed the true cost of the Council's mistake. Entire sectors had been lost. Trillions of lives had vanished. Numerous civilizations would never fully recover. Empty worlds stretched across regions that once supported thriving populations. Years later, representatives gathered once again within the council chamber where humanity's warning had first been dismissed. Many seats remained permanently vacant. They served as reminders of what arrogance had cost. A younger generation eventually asked why humanity had become the leading voice in rebuilding the galaxy. The answer was remarkably simple. Humanity never possessed the largest empire. Humanity never commanded the strongest fleets. Humanity earned that position because it understood a lesson others learned too late. Ignoring a warning does not make the danger disappear. When the evidence pointed toward catastrophe, humans prepared while everyone else debated. That decision saved what remained of civilization. The galaxy survived because one species chose caution over comfort, preparation over pride, and action over assumption. Humanity did not become the guardian of the new age because it sought power. Humanity became its guardian because it was the only civilization willing to believe the impossible before the impossible arrived.